Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for day 2-ish, the second day that the new set, Edge of Eternities, has been live on MTG Arena. We're taking a look at what standard decks are popping up. So this focus will be on best of 3 standard. I'm waiting for data to come in for best of 1, hoping to get out a video for tomorrow. As of right now, it's a very small population. It's only like a day's worth of data, so not getting too much there. We put out a video late yesterday about some day 1 decks. So there was like Boros Burn, there was a couple updates on existing decks like Dimir, Vivi, there was an Esper Midrange deck that did well, so have that as well if you're interested. But we're going to look at some MTGO League data, as well as some streamers that are doing pretty well with some decks, and then just community decks as well. So we're going to get out videos a little bit more frequent this week as more information comes out. People are looking where to spend their wildcards and trying to help kind of guide them in terms of what's winning, what's not. In terms of play rate for the day, Vivi's still probably the most popular, Dimir Midrange, and then everything else is kind of in the single digits. We have Golgari Midrange, Mono Green Landfall, Mono White Tokens, which is pretty much stock to what it was before. The Battlecrier deck's been picking up. It's doing well in terms of win rate as well. So let's jump into it. The MTGO challenge was won by Vivi Cauldron, Universe, and I apologize for the MTG decks, not the visually the nicest compared to Untapped, but for these early days we got to get the data from here. So this is pretty much the update in terms of the Vivi decks. The Vivi deck that did well in the previous challenge was playing the 3-color Temur Loot. This one's playing Draconautics Engineer, which is another exhaust ability to haste out your team that turn, make it so any of your creatures with counters can make dragons as well, which plays pretty nice. Tursa, the other one was on a higher number of Steam Core Scholars, but it's kind of that core, a mix of like the old Oculus decks as well as kind of the Tursa Vivi kind of elements to it. Soul Cauldron in here, your Bounce Package, Winter Night Stories, Profs, all kind of mixed into here. Notably, it does not have a shock line in this current iteration, so Starting Town being played instead for the deck. From there, the sideboard, we have Broadside Barrage, just a new way to deal 5 damage, and it also lets you draw discard, which plays into the theme of the deck. Otherwise, pretty stock sideboard in terms of the playable cards. The second place deck was a really cool update on the Mono Green Landfall. So we say Mono Green, this one's from WCL, but it's actually slight Gruul Splash and then Temur Splash out of the sideboard. So you have your usual kind of effects with Landfall, Bristly Bill, Sog's Chocobo, Tifa, Traveling Chocobo, Llanowar Elves, Mossborn Hydra. But this one's playing 2 copies of Icetill Explorer. So the Icetill lets you play lands from your graveyard, and you can play an additional land each turn. So your fetch lands can be played from your graveyard. So it lets you reuse them over and over again. And then whenever a land enters, you mill a card, so it kind of self-enables that way there. But you have the backup plan here with World Soul's Rage. So you ramp a bunch, you mill, and then you can World Soul's Rage for a whole bunch of damage, put a bunch of lands into play, and trigger Landfall a whole bunch of times like that. These decks generally are a little soft to heavy removal, so post-board, you could bring in an island, and then you actually play Dragonback Assault, so you just pivot completely out of kind of a creature deck, or like more susceptible to cheap removal, Seam Rip, stuff like that. And instead you just play, any land I play now makes me dragons. So you can kind of change your plan there. You have Icetill, so you kind of shift into more of a mid-range deck. Against decks like Vivi, or playing a lot of spells, you have Magebane Lizard, Repulsive Mutation as kind of a counterspell protect effect, and then Siege Ship Impact, just a way to destroy artifacts or enchantments. That also gives you the potential to get a lander, so a artifact token that you can pay 2, sacrifice to find a land if the thing you're blowing up is 2 CMC or less. So really cool kind of update take. This deck's always like baffling to me how expensive it is in paper, just because of Bristly Bills and like the Traveling Chocobo. Like none of these cards like super playable outside of this, but just I guess the EDH commander tax on some of these cards. So then Claudio, frequent top 8er of MTGO, played Esper Pixie. So this one here, Nurturing Pixin, Sun Pearl Karen, Cosmo Guard Zenith, the kind of Quarry Steel but on a creature. So 3 mana, 2/4. Whenever you cast a second spell, you either create 2/1/1 tokens or you put a counter on each creature you control. your Fears, your Spyglass Sirens. We have Cryogen Relic. When it enters or leaves the battlefield, you draw a card. So even when you blink it, you get to draw a card, a way to refill your hand. Shoot the Sheriff as removal, along with Nowhere to Run, Momentum Breakers, your stock ups, and then Tragic Trajectory as kind of a Tragic Slip-esque effect. So Void is almost like Revolt if something left the battlefield, almost like Fatal Push in a way. So either does -2/2 if you voided, found something in your hand, it does -10/10. Esper has really good mana in terms of shock lands as well. So it has 2 shocks out of the 3 available, and then it has all the verges to kind of fix your mana in that sense. Sage of the Skies, when you're multi-spelling and good against aggressive decks. No More Lies, annul cheap counters. Pinnacle Storage as the new temporary lockdown style effect. Kaido in the sideboard for kind of the grindier matchups. Elegy Acolyte. So this is kind of a Kalidas-esque effect. The kind of 4 mana, 4 power lifelinkers. This one, whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card, lose a life. So similar to Enduring Curiosity, but not to that extent of every creature. And then Void makes you, if something left the battlefield, you get to create a 2/2 artifact creature instead. Goes Vacuum for Graveyard Hate, some juiced interaction, duress, exercise, seam rip as new cheap removal, and defiled crypt for the grindier matchups to rebuy stuff. The other top 4 was Pepe team with Dimir Midrange. So 2 Tishana's main, the Enduring Curiosities, pretty stock in terms of the creature the effects. We see Bitter Triumph, Shoot the Sheriff as the kind of removal package along with the Tragic Trajectory. We have Watery Grave in the mana base as well. Sideboard, pretty much existing cards. Duress, Intimidation Tactics is Hand Hate. Fabloom Trick's very good in the mirror. You have Scavenger Region as a sweeper. More Kaidos for like the grindier matchups. Graveyard Hate, activated ability, triggered abilities with Tishana. Cheap counters with Negated Disdainful Stroke, and Preachers, kind of the mid-range aggressive battles. So we had Gruul Aggro by The Fire Shoes. Great follow. So this is 5/2. And he called it Gruul Aggro, no new cards. So it's basically the old kind of mouse-ish Innkeeper's Talent package. So you have Innkeeper's Talent, you have your Emberheart Challenger, Manifold Mouse, package in there, Hired Claw, Paw Patch Recruit, Questing Druid for card advantage, Nemesis, and Sentinel all in here as well. Overprotect works nicely, just a way to push through damage with big things, as well as the double strike off the Manifold Mouse. Torch, Scorching Shot as cheap removal. These color pair also got us access to the Stomping Grounds. Sentinel, the Nameless City, just for the kind of, when they're bringing in removal, it's more for the grindier games, can provide some card advantage. You have cheap removal and Scorching Shot, Obliterating Bolt, Fire Magic for the go-wide decks, Braid similarly. Heritage Reclamation, just flexible artifact enchantment and Graveyard Hate. Ghost Vacuum, Graveyard Hate. Dreadma's Ire, just a way to push through Trample. And notably against like Vivi, you can blow up Cauldron. Chandra for the grindier matchups. Surik for the heavy removal matchups. We have Azorius Blink by DB Dykeman. Went top 16, 4/2. So this is a cool deck. So you're using both Splash Portal to exile a creature and return it into play, or Twinning Twins with the Swift Spiral. You can exile and return it. Charming Prince could also blink. And then you have Fortune that can also blink a creature. Quantum Riddler as a way to draw a card off the Warp. So basically you're playing Warp for the cheaper cost, and then it's almost like the evoke effects in Modern, right? You evoke it, ephemerate type thing. So this draws a card when it enters, you can blink it, and then it comes in as a 4/6 and draws you more cards. You have Bezos, obviously, for value. Twinning Twins in here could blink, and then it's a creature on the other side. Charming Prince, and then Anti-Causal Vestige. The new Eldrazi, so for 4, comes in, and then when it leaves the battlefield, you get to draw a card and put a permanent equal to the number of lands you have in play into play for free. So it's another way to kind of cheat into stuff. Seam Rips, Elspeth's kind of mixed into there. Graveyard Hate, cheap removal, Bezos for kind of like the mid-range matchups, aggressive decks, Annul for artifact enchantment counters, just a bunch of cheap counters, Seam Rip as more removal. Gruul Delirium by Zendikar Goberin. Top 16 as well, 4/2. So this one's got an interesting take on the Goblin or the Delirium deck. We see Nova Hellkite in here as a 2 of. This is a card that really is like 3 mana for 4/5 haste, which is nice. Keen-Eyed Curator, Graveyard Hate, it gets bigger. FOMO, obviously, Patchwork, Wildfire. We have Twin Mob Stormbrood. So this is in here basically as a removal spell, which plays nicely. You have Summon Beholder as a way to get haste, some card advantage, also multi-type, questing Druid for card advantage. Violent Urge, Overprotect that we usually see. Cash Grab in here, a different way to kind of mill and put a permanent. So this is replacing the Seed of Hopes, which has since rotated 1 more mana, so it does kind of slow it down, but helps enable Delirium, and then you have Breakout, Bushwhack kind of mixed into here. I personally don't like playing 2 commercial districts, let alone any commercial districts. I just find they are a bit awkward because you're trying to curve out. I've never really liked them in this deck, but they're better when you can obviously fetch for them, but just haven't been too fond of it. I still like having some numbers of Screaming Nemesis in the deck as well, but this is something I'm going to try out. I have most of this deck, if not all of it, already in paper, so something to see about updating since I was previously on mono red before the bans. Just more 5 damage removal, cheap removal. You have Chandra for the grindier matchups when they go through your graveyard, similar with Vivian. Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate, Obliterating Bolt, cheap removal, Pyroclasm for the sweeper. For the go wide decks, most of your stuff has like 3 toughness, which is helpful. And then Questing Druid, again, just more copies for the grindier matchups. You can kind of pivot out. So if your opponent's showing like Rest in Peace, this literally does nothing, similar with like Cash Grab. Doesn't do much. When you want to pivot out, just become like Gruul, kind of mid-rangey. A couple of streamer community decks. So Shahar Shenhar, former world champion, is 22-5 into like high mythic, top 300, with an update on Temur Battlecrier combo. So how this works is Temur Battlecrier reduces the cost of spells you control. So they cost 1 less for each creature you control, power 4 or greater. You can start chaining together like Trailblazers to draw you cards, stuff like that. The Roaming Throne only costs like 1 mana or less. And then you name Dragon typically, and then you just get a whole bunch of triggers off Dragonhawk. Then just ping your opponent to death. You can haste out your team with Cactus Folk Sure Shot. You have Anti-Causal Vestige, another card that can be potentially free in the deck. And then the new card as well, Devastating Onslaught. So this one here, create X tokens that are copies of target artifact or creature you control. They gain haste on the turn, sacrifice them. So this gets the cost reduction. So each creature is basically -1x. So if you have 2 creatures, it's basically a free copy that comes out. And so another way to haste enable your team. Worst case, it's just red mana to give your creatures. Or no, this is just those tokens gain haste, so not all your creatures. Sideboard, way to gain some life, draw some cards. Vaultborn Hydra, Ugin, and kind of the mid-range decks. Heavy removal decks, you have Surik, Sharpshooter, Artifact Enchantment Hate. Negate for cheap counters along with Disdainful Stroke. Torch is cheap removal. Spectral Denial is kind of a cheap counter spell that plays nicely with your 4-power creatures. Smuggler Surprise, another way to just kind of cheat into big stuff if your opponent's bringing in a lot of removal. Graveyard Hate, and Fire Magic is a super for go-wide decks. Mr. Stephen Crocuses is 9-0 with this mono-white aggro deck. Got up to number 35 mythic actually with it. So this is kind of a white weenie tap theme deck. So you have ways, so Lumen class Frigate is an Anthem, 2 mana via a spaceship. Then it can become a lifelink 3/5. This one sealed is really good. And then like Aven Interrupter is a flash threat, but Lightstall Inquisitor taxes your opponent's a spell or a land from their hand. It's a 1 mana 2/1. Seamrip is cheap removal. Veteran Survivor, if it's tapped, starts exiling stuff from your opponent's graveyard and can get bigger. Voyager Glidecar, another way to tap your stuff. Warden, another way to tap your stuff and takes advantage of all these artifacts and creatures. Reluctant Role Model starts putting counters. You have the Sunstar Chaplain. Beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, you put a counter on them, remove it, a counter, and tap target artifact or creature. So some value there. Sheltered is removal. Wandering Rescuer as protection. And then you have your Soul Stone in here. Authority for the aggressive deck. Seamrip, more cheap removal. This one here is basically just a tax effect. So activated abilities with the chosen name cost 2 more to activate. Cauldron, stuff like that. You can kind of shut them off that way there, just tax them. You have Voice for the counterspell decks, for heavy removal, Ajani decks, Sail to Survivor, heavy removal, rebuy stuff, Creature Mirrors, you have Split Up, and then I forgot that Archangel of Ties was reprinted. So basically in Creature Mirrors kind of taxes your opponent, both offense and defense, which is nice. This card was really good when it was first in Standard, but I've not seen this in quite some time. And then lastly, so this recent mythic from the community, it's just an update on Blue-Eye Control from Slayer, they're 5835 with this list here. So we see Pinnacle Storage over Temporary Lockdown. We see Consult the Stars as another way to just draw a bunch of cards. This one's kind of playing like a flash creature package. We see Curiosity, Stoic Sphinx, and Bezos in here, along with the Meringue River Regent, Ultima. Ultima Enduring Curiosity is an interesting, because it doesn't allow you to get the creature back, where Day of Judgment, at least this comes back into play, but kind of flash creatures, and then just ways to put pressure on your opponent. Cheap removal, Graveyard Hate, some cheap counters, just more sweepers, flash Graveyard Hate with Conceal's Flanker, Tishana's Tidebinder as another way to kind of deal with activated or triggered abilities, and then Hornlock Whale, kind of creature removal, and then another threat at instant speed. So that is it for the day. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking so far, and we'll be back with some more. Thanks for watching.